Good morning. My name is Mark Spalding, and I'm the president of the Ocean Foundation. We are very pleased today to host this webinar regarding plastic pollution, together with the embassies of Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Denmark. We have some excellent speakers for you today. I think it's very clear and does not need to be reestablished that we have a tremendous plastic pollution problem on our planet. We're finding microplastics in snowfall in the Arctic, in the spray from sea foam as waves crash on our shores, in the depths of the ocean, and in our soils. It is literally everywhere. But we have very little in the way of tools to address it. The UN has reported that there are fundamental gaps in international legal and policy frameworks relevant for fighting this type of pollution. Countries all over the world have started exploring a number of policy responses and measures to strengthen global governance structures, including the possibility of a new global agreement. Many in the private sector have developed innovative ideas and technologies for trying to tackle this. In this virtual event with the Nordic embassies and ourselves at the Ocean Foundation, we're going to discuss both these government and private sector perspectives. Just to touch on the Ocean Foundation for a moment, we are a public international foundation. In other words, we are not a private corporate or private family foundation, nor are we a government foundation. Many in the ocean conservation world, NGOs or philanthropists, have paid a tremendous amount of attention to the plastic pollution problem. Some have worked on beach cleanups, river cleanups in order to prevent plastic from getting into the ocean. Others have spent time developing activities to try and spot and collect plastic in the ocean. NGOs and academics have spent time documenting the problem, measuring the prevalence of plastic, measuring plastic in bivalves and in fish, etc. For our part at the Ocean Foundation, we are looking at the chemistry and engineering of plastic. We are asking questions about the toxicity for humans and toxicity for the natural environment from plastic and the chemicals in plastic that may leach out into food and drink or into the natural environment as the result of temperature or other factors. But we're also looking at the questions regarding the actual chemistry and engineering design of the plastics that make them very complicated and therefore difficult to recycle, as well as some of the, for want of a better words, contaminations that happen when you mix different additives, colorants, adhesives to plastic products. The end result is that you end up with something that is not singular. There is not a single thing called plastic necessarily. You end up with a piece of a product in your hand that may have solidifiers and colors and labels and the adhesive for the label, all of which make it very much more difficult than glass or aluminum to recycle. As a result, less than 10% of all plastic that has ever been made is recycled. We have a tremendous problem, therefore, when 90% of a category of material is not recycled, is not entering the circular economy, and instead is being sent to landfills or being used and burned, releasing fossil fuel carbon emissions as fuel. This means that a lot of plastic, because of its incredible benefit, lightweight, ends up in the environment. It blows away from solid waste management facilities. It blows away from trash cans, it is deposited on the ground by users, and therefore it ends up in our soils, our rivers, and our ocean. This is a critical problem and one that is gaining tremendous amount of attention. With us today are going to be some government representatives, and in this first panel, the first speaker will be United States Representative Chellie Pingree from here in Maine, and then she will be followed by State Secretary Maren Hersleth Holsen from the Norwegian Ministry of Climate and Environment in Norway. Our third speaker, Matthias Philipson, is the CEO for the Swedish Plastic Recycling, and he's a member of the Swedish delegation of the circular economy. So we'll really get the perspective of what is being done in the United States, as well as some snapshots of what we're seeing being done in the Nordic countries. Let me start by introducing United States Representative Chellie Pingree, who represents Maine's 1st district here in the state of Maine. She was the first woman to be elected to Congress from this district, and she previously has served on the House Rules Committee, Armed Services Committee. She sits on the House Appropriations Committee and serves on the Subcommittee on Military Construction and Veterans Affairs, as well as serving on the House Agriculture Committee. Representative Pingree has a long history of building bipartisan support for our ocean and coasts, for which we thank her. In this conversation, I want to note that she was one of the original co-sponsors of the Save Our Seas Act, which was reauthorized by NOAA, which reauthorized the NOAA Marine Debris Program through FY 2022 and provides resources to help states respond to severe marine debris events. She is also the original co-sponsor of the Save Our Seas Act 2.0, together with Representative Bonamici and Representative Don Young. This act bolsters the Marine Debris Program and establishes a Marine Debris Response Trust Fund to use in responding to marine debris events. She has also been a longtime vocal proponent for ocean conservation and has supported numerous pieces of legislation to protect our ocean, including House HR 3596 to Keep America's Waterfronts Working Act, which created the Working Waterfront Grant Program and established a Working Waterfront Task Force at the Department of Commerce. Lastly, I'll note that Representative Pingree also championed HR 1716, the Coastal Communities Ocean Acidification Act, which would direct federal officials to work with state and local experts to study the ocean acidity and deliver a public report on the socioeconomic impact that ocean acidification has on coastal communities. Representative Pingree, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Mark, for that very kind introduction, but thank you in particular to the Ocean Foundation for the great work that you do and for bringing us all together today, as well as the Nordic embassies. It would be much better if we could participate in person, but of course we've all gotten used to joining each other virtually, but I'm looking forward to hearing from the other panelists and having this joint relationship on working forward in the future. Clearly we're talking about an extremely catastrophic issue, and I'm glad we have the chance to discuss it. As you've already heard, I've been a member of Congress for 12 years. Previously, I was a member of my state legislature, and I'm also an organic farmer, but I work on a lot of ocean-related and climate change, sustainability issues. Those are kind of my focus. There is wonderfully a growing amount of collaboration between the Nordic countries and my home state of Maine. And that makes me particularly happy just because my grandparents were either from Norway, Sweden, or Denmark. So I have a lot of Nordic history. I'm probably the only member of Congress who has a map of Scandinavia on my wall. And also we have a lot of cooperation between Finland. I'll talk about that later. Iceland, we have a direct shipping route now with Iceland. And we just have so much in common, our oceans, our fisheries, renewable energy, so many of the challenges that we're dealing with. So it's really wonderful to be with all of you today. Mainers in particular, we have environmentalism at our heart. We're an ocean state. It's critical to our economy, our fishing industry, our tourism industry. All of these challenges that we're dealing with strike at the very core of who we are. So this is particularly important to have this kind of collaboration. Mark did a really good idea of talking about the scale of this problem. I don't think I have to repeat it to anyone here, but suffice it to say that oceans make up 2/3 of the Earth's surface. So that's one of the reasons I've been particularly interested in the ocean warming and the ocean acidification, sea level rise impacting our coastal communities. But marine debris is a growing issue. It's a challenge to our marine life, certainly a challenge to public health, the amount of plastic we are all now ingesting all of the time. And it's a growing issue in terms of the public's awareness, whether they've seen, a picture of the plastic debris, or they've heard stories about the amount of plastic that may be in the seafood that they eat. I think we're seeing a growing consensus that it's an issue that we need to be concerned about. As I was thinking about this conversation today, I couldn't help but just kind of reflect on what I see as somewhat of a perfect storm in the political and policy issues around plastic. It's kind of an unusual time. As I said, I think we have a growing awareness of plastics. Clearly in the United States, we've embraced recycling. Maine had a bottle recycling bill, a bottle return bill, a deposit bill since 1976. And recycling has really become the norm in almost all of our communities. We dutifully separate our trash. Some communities have a financial penalty for trash that doesn't go into recycling. And we're very aware of the cost of the material that goes into our landfills, as well as the environmental issues. But we also are aware of some big challenges. And I think that's led many of our states and cities to start to ban plastic. On a bigger scale, we have a huge consumer preference of interest in things that are not plastic. Are they climate change friendly? If you search the internet, you will see that there are numerous consumer products clearly don't take up enough of the plastic, but everything from clothing to furniture to toothbrushes, bags, everything seems to be made of plastic. And I think part of that is because of a huge consumer interest. So I guess part of the perfect storm is that we are aware of this. We have a desire to do something about it. But in this moment, we have some real challenges. We've seen the crash of recycling, which has presented a big dilemma for our communities. They've set up big recycling operations, but often there isn't a source to take them away. China closed its ports to plastic in 2018. And since 2019, we've been sending our plastic to 96 different countries, which most of it ends up in rivers and oceans and kind of makes the whole idea of recycling not exactly an honest return. Then in this unusual moment of the pandemic, we have seen a much greater use of single-use plastics, basically for our public health. For all of us who dutifully carried our recycled and returnable, our multiple-use bags into the grocery store, we were told, no, we can't have those in here anymore. You have to use a single-use plastic bag. We've stopped many of our bans. We found that things have to be individually packaged during this moment in time, so we're not sharing things and touching things. So that has created sort of a hitch in this particular moment in time. And then as an odd, kind of underside of climate change, as we reduce the amount of fossil fuels and we make more and more plans to continue to reduce that, we have the fossil fuel industry that is saying, well, wait a minute, we have to turn this into plastic because we have to have a continuing market. Plastic production is considered to be that it will be about 20% of all oil production used in 2050. And there was a recent story about the Kenya trade agreement, which the United States is pushing right now, and how as part of that negotiation, there is, a certain lobbying effort to change some of the plastic bans in Kenya to get that as an opportunity to send more whether it's plastic trash or to send more plastic products there, get rid of that ban, get rid of the desire of Kenya to stop importing foreign garbage. And it just is a sort of sense of how you kind of get some awareness on one front and you turn around and you realize there's a challenge on the other front. And I guess it goes without saying that we currently have an administration that's been reluctant to engage in international cooperation. I think a very important part of working on this is our international agreements, and has a certain reluctance, that's putting it mildly, to deal with climate change and other environmental issues. But let me talk a little bit about some of these solutions that we've been working on. Mark mentioned some of the actions that we've taken in Congress, and thank you for talking about the Save Our Seas Act. We passed one version in the 115th Congress, our previous Congress, and now in the 116th. This is a bipartisan bill, and as you mentioned, it increases the amount of funding to NOAA, the agency that is responsible for the marine debris program. It's not a lot of money, but at least we're increasing it. It bolsters some of our international engagement around this issue. I think, as I said, a very important part of it, encourage federal agencies to partner with foreign governments. It closes some knowledge gaps around doing more assessments around microplastic pollution. And it also addresses some of these recycling challenges, requires more recycling, funds more recycling, helps to deal with that side of the problem. We also had a bill introduced this time, the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, which Representative Lowenthal from the West Coast sponsored, and that is just a phase out of single-use plastics. It also contains a national beverage container refund program, which is what we already have in Maine, and also requires those companies engaged in single-use plastic to help finance and manage some of the waste and recycling programs, kind of trying to make that more of everybody's issue, not just municipal issues. But we know that this can't just be done through regulation, and we haven't gone far enough, although many of our states and municipalities are also working in concert with us. But it's just too slow. So we have to have strategies that engage our businesses, our NGOs, and certainly our universities. As I said before, some of this is consumer driven. That's very helpful. One of the supermarket chains in Maine, Hannaford, Maine, has really adopted a zero waste policy. And while that deals primarily with food waste, it's also an attempt to get rid of more of the plastic packaging. And I think that is increasing consumer demand for their supermarket chain and showing that people want to go to places where they can see that things are done differently. In terms of our relationships with the university and foreign governments, in 2019, Maine signed a memorandum of agreement of understanding with Finland, and that's been a wonderful cooperative agreement working around some of the great similarities that we have, particularly around the forest economy and some of the transitions that we've been going through, looking for new opportunities in our forest, just as Finland had to do as demand for certain products are diminished, looking at new things. And this has been particularly around the bioeconomy, encouraging business development in that sector. So this is a great engagement between our two countries, and also an investment in our university system. Part of it is around the health of the forest, making sure that we have this material going into the future, but also in research and development. At the University of Maine, we have an organization called the Process Development Center, and that is where a nanocellulose program is held, and they are one of the suppliers of cellulosic materials, cellulosic nanomaterials, to the rest of the world for researchers and searching for new applications. As we know, everything from plastic bottles. Maine is the site of Poland Spring Water Company, and there's been a real interest in trying to get the water that is harvested here put in a bottle that is made from a wood fiber plastic that is made here. So there's a whole variety of things we have going on here: cross laminate timber, insulation materials that use wood fiber, but basically trying to reduce toxic materials from our environment. I also serve on the Appropriations Committee, so one way to encourage more of this has been through funding. So looking at funding some of the programs that we fund around the Community Wood and Wood Innovations Program, again, whether it's to a university sector or somewhere in the private industry trying to develop new products. Northern States Research Cooperative, that's another way that, or that's just northeastern states, so my region of the country, developing new forest products. But part of it, again, as I said, is funding the health of the forests, this idea of new product research, these cooperative agreements, all critically important. I'd just say in closing that this idea of us having this conversation today is just critically important. International cooperation is more important than it's ever been. We share our oceans, we share the atmosphere, our fisheries know no boundaries. All of this, we are completely interconnected, and it doesn't serve us well to have just one country or one entity making an agreement. And I also wanted to say that while I mentioned we have an administration that's been reluctant to join in foreign agreements, to work on joint products, to even face some of the big challenges that we have, you do have very strong partners in our country, whether it's members of Congress and my colleagues who are really interested in these things, or states and municipalities that have really taken up the mantle. Maine has a very active and engaged climate change program going on. Looking forward to our state, and I know many other states do the same. So I'm looking forward to working together. I'm really looking forward to hearing from all of you about the interesting work that you have going on and the ideas that you can share with us. So thank you all for participating in this and giving me this opportunity to share, and I'll look forward to working together with you in the future. Thank you so much.
Super. Thank you very much, Representative Pingree, and thank you for your knowledge and passion about this issue. I'm going to remind everyone who is listening in that there is a chat box function, and we will take your questions if you will write them into the chat box once we get to Q&A for the first panel, and then again at the end of the second panel. Let me now introduce State Secretary Maren Hersleth, Holsen, Ministry of Climate and Environment for Norway. Norway has been an active leader in reducing marine plastic pollution, and a new report is set to be released by the Ministry of Climate and Environment, and the State Secretary will give high-level remarks regarding its findings and what Norway is currently doing to combat this global problem. Additionally, Norway's Minister for Climate and Environment, Mr. Spalding, Retovaden, is current president of the United Nations Environment Assembly and has been active in the Nordic initiative for a global effort to combat marine litter. In many ways, Norway is on the forefront of plastic recycling. Up to 92% of bottles recycled hold such high quality material that it can be reused again to drink bottles, sometimes more than 50 times. This is an incredible achievement given what I told you earlier, that 91% of plastic produced worldwide is not recycled, and 8 million metric tons wind up in the sea every year. Secretary, I'll give the floor to you.
Well, thank you very much, Mrs. Spalding. And I should say hello, everybody, or maybe I should say good morning to some of you and good afternoon to others. And thank you very much to Congresswoman Pingree for her participation and very interesting remarks as well. I'm very glad to be here and share some reflections on how Norway view the global plastic pollution and how we should move forward to solve this problem. First of all, we are already witnessing a dramatic surge for plastic pollution in the environment. Plastic production is projected to double by 2040. This is an urgent threat to our oceans and our livelihood, as you have mentioned already. We need to rethink how we deal with plastic across the value chain from beginning to the end. We need better system for waste management. We see the number of countries have put in place measures to remove single-use plastic items from the market and put in place incentives for items that can be reused and recycled. There's a clear need for more sustainable design of plastic products, improving their ability to last longer, to be repaired, and to be reused. And at the end of their useful lives, to be sorted and recycled into new products. We are all part of a global plastic economy. To address the challenge of plastic pollution, we must target action through the entire life cycle life cycle of plastics. In order to create a level playing field for businesses to innovate and improve their products, we need a common set of guiding principles. Reports from the UN have demonstrated fundamental gaps in the existing international legal and policy frameworks, rendering them ill-equipped to efficiently deal with this problem. Therefore, strengthening global governance to address the urgent challenge is a key priority for my government and the rest of the Nordic countries. The United Nations Environmental Assembly, the UNEA, has in its 4 consecutive sessions adopted resolutions strengthening action to deal with this issue. In 2017, the global community agreed to eliminate all discharge of plastic litter and microplastics into the ocean. The last 3 years, government experts have taken part in the ad hoc open-ended expert group established by the UNEA 3 to develop more knowledge and provide different options for UNEA 5 to step up actions. In this expert group, we have seen significant support among member states for a new global framework to guide our actions going forward. Many states have provided written submissions outlining what they believe should be included in the new framework and recommended to UNEA 5 as options to pursue. However, a small minority countries object to providing recommendations to UNEA 5. We have noted with great interest in the Save Our Sea Act 2, as it is sent back to the Senate, that the US will take on a global leadership role and assess the potential for a new international agreement after being signed into law. From our point of view, this would be a much welcome step to make progress globally. Last year, the Nordic Council of Environment Ministers called for a global agreement to prevent plastic pollutions and commissioned a report to look into the possible elements of a global agreement to prevent plastic pollution. The report will look into the whole life cycle of plastic products. The 5 Nordic environment ministers will launch Nordic report next Monday, the October 19th. The report explores traditional features of multilateral environmental agreements, such as reporting systems, strong knowledge and science basis, as well as financing and capacity building. I cannot go through the full breadth of the report here, but I want to highlight 2 key features suggested in the report that I think are worth exploring further. The first feature is to develop national plastic management plans. A coordinated development of plastic plans could empower countries to set targets and develop and implement national policies tailored to meet specific national needs and circumstances and addressing the life cycle of plastic. The second feature is to develop international sustainable criteria for plastic products. The new agreement could formulate guidance for governments to promote industry compliance with the performance measures set out in the sustainable criteria. This could be an important tool to reduce the amount of plastic products on the market that cannot be reused or recycled. And as such, also reduce the burden on waste management systems. The Nordic countries have an ambition to adopt a mandate to negotiate a new global agreement to prevent plastic pollution at the next possible opportunity at UNEA. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak to this event. I want to invite all of you to take part in the launch of the Nordic report on the October 19th, which will be streamed on the website nordicreport2020.com. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary, and thank you very much for telling us about the report and when folks will be able to learn more about it. I think that having national plans on plastic and standards for sustainability will be extremely beneficial steps forward. Our third panelist on this panel is Matthias Philipsson, who, as I mentioned, is the CEO for Swedish Plastic Recycling and a member of the Swedish delegation for the circular economy. He is in a unique position of being able to speak both to the developments in the private sector as well as the cooperation needed to work with the public sector. His company, Swedish Plastic Recycling, has decided that all plastic packaging in Sweden should be recycled so that it can become new plastic products. They have built the largest and most efficient plant for plastic recycling in Europe, thereby taking a big step towards achieving their vision. Utilizing automated technology, they sort different plastic types with maximum precision, helping to reduce waste and ensure that as much as possible can become new plastic products. Currently, Swedish Plastic Recycling has the capacity to collect and handle all plastic packaging from all households in Sweden. The goal is to make plastic circular over and again. Matthias, I'll turn it over to you. And listeners, please remember that you can post questions in the chat box.
Thank you very much, Mark, and thank you for thank you Ocean Foundation, thank you the Nordic embassies for inviting me and all other participants in this important webinar. I kindly would like to ask you to start my presentation, but yeah, thank you very much. Like Mark told you in the beginning, my name is Matthias Philipsson. I'm CEO of Swedish Plastic Recycling. Swedish Plastic Recycling is a private company owned by the plastic industry in Sweden. In Sweden and in Europe, we have something called the producer responsibility, which basically means that all private actors that are putting some kind of plastic packaging on the market also needs to collect it and recycle it. Therefore, they have created Swedish Plastic Recycling. So I'm responsible for the collection and recycling of Swedish plastic packaging from households. At the same time, since a couple of months ago, I'm also a very, very proud member of the Swedish delegation for circular economy. This is basically an independent group of experts from the private industry, and we are working together with the government to basically jointly trying to help Sweden transform to a circular economy. This cooperation between the private sector and the government, I think, is quite unique. And since I've been working in this group for a couple of months, I recognized that actually the government is listening very, very closely to what the private sector is telling them. And this is basically, I think, a good way for both the private sector and the government to work jointly towards a common goal. I would like to speak a little bit about the situation of plastic in Sweden. So if we please can have the next slide. Thank you very much. This shows you some figures of the situation currently in worldwide and in Sweden. And as you can see, if we begin at the bottom, you can see that worldwide there's about 32% of plastic packaging that actually ends up in the ocean. You can also see from this slide that almost 40% of plastic packaging ends up in landfills worldwide. There's a smaller amount that goes to energy recovery, and there's also some amounts that goes to recycling. At the same time, we also have some figures here from Sweden. And I wanted to show you this just to give some hope, and that there is actually possible to achieve very important things. As you can see from this slide, in Sweden, there's less than 0.5% of plastic packaging, Swedish plastic packaging, that ends up in the oceans. 0.5% ends up in landfill, because we have a complete ban on landfill. On the other hand, there's a huge amount that currently is going to energy recovery, and still a quite small number that is being recycled. Having said that, I think we have a really great collection system in Sweden, and you can see the result of this in this picture. However, we still have huge challenges to go from energy recovery to recycling. But on the other hand, Sweden has a very long coastline. And even if we are good at collecting Swedish plastic packaging, we are affected by plastics in the oceans. We can proceed to next slide. Thank you very much. This is the last slide. I wanted to speak a little bit about an initiative we have made. And as you saw on the last slide, Sweden has about 10 to 15, 20% of recycling of plastic packaging. We have started an initiative called the Plastic Leap, and this consists of different activities and a strategy which aimed to reach 55% plastic recycling in just 5 years. This is extremely hard, and there's not only one solution. We have here to work closely the private sector and the government. And the steps in this strategy is based on design for recycling, where I actually are educating and trying to influence my owners, the producers, to design for recycling. Sweden, as one of the first countries in Europe, have introduced a new system where we actually, private companies or producers that are putting packaging on the market that is not recyclable, they have to pay a higher fee. The government has presented a legislation that will force us to basically offer 100% at-home collection in the future, in order to make it easier for the consumer to actually sort and recycle the plastic packaging. Like Mark mentioned in introduction of me, we have recently built Europe's most efficient sorting plant. And just by focusing on new technology, with this plant, we have actually doubled the recycling of plastic packaging in Sweden. So technology is also a very important part in this journey. And last but not least, we need to have a higher demand for recycled plastics. Today, it is way too cheap to produce plastic packaging out of oil. And therefore, we have a close cooperation and discussion with the government in order for them to bring out policies for policy instruments and policy frameworks in order to make recycled plastics more competitive. This is basically the strategy for Sweden. It will be hard, but I'm 100% sure that we will reach this target. On the other hand, this will not be possible for Sweden only. We need to cooperate on a global scale. There will be report released in 1 week, actually, on the 19th of October, as we have heard our previous speaker mention. And this is very interesting for us. This report is called the Nordic Report on Possible Elements of a New Global Agreement to Prevent Plastic Pollution. And it will be released on the 19th of October. And I'm very much looking forward to take part of this and see what we, the private sector, can do together with the government. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Matthias, and thank you very much for mentioning the report again. Neil posted the link for those of you who would like to sign up to learn about the release of the report. We now have scheduled time for questions for the panelists, and I'm going to take advantage and ask a question of Secretary Holsen. You mentioned gaps in international governance, and what specifically are the gaps in that global governance as it pertains to this type of plastic pollution?
Well, first of all, today there is no global framework that deals with the issue of the plastic solutions as such. A lot of initiatives exist, but there is no institution with a mandate to coordinate existing efforts or where we can evaluate whenever we are on the right track or support countries to put in place efficient policies. This is harboring international managements of plastic. These shortcomings necessitate a global response that extend beyond waste management and address the entire life cycle of plastic pollution.
But international treaties take a very long time to negotiate. Do you think it's possible to get an agreement and get one in a timely fashion?
Well, that's a good question. Well, looking back, we have seen that multilateral environment agreement takes some time to develop. But we have to remember that we have had swift negotiations as well. For example, from establishing the mandate of the Basel Convention and the Montreal Protocol, it took less than 2.5 years to adopt the agreement. It is a matter of political will, I think, to make bold decisions. Can we say that?
Yes, I was impressed by how quickly the Basel Convention amendment took to get resolved. I'm going to keep focusing on you since I have you on the screen. What do you see as in the way of support for such a new agreement right now?
We see mounting support from all corners of the world, actually. Last year, the Nordic countries, the Caribbean countries, the Pacific Islands, the EU, and the African group, representing over 110 countries, all issued public statements in support of exploring a global agreement. Since 2014, when we proposed the first resolution on marine plastic litter and microplastics at the first UNEA, we have seen this issue rising to the top of the agenda in many countries. We have a wider understanding of the complexity of the issue today, while previously thinking that we need to stop plastic litter from entering the ocean. We now know that we need to have a more comprehensive approach to the entire life cycle of plastic. Plastics ending up in the ocean is a bad use of resources. In a post-pandemic world, I believe a key driver for this agreement will be the benefits for the circular economy and what we call building back better, right?
Yes, excellent, excellent. Representative Pingree, what predictions do you have for plastics legislation in the next Congress? The Lowenthal bill or some other approach, packaging fees as groups like the Recycling Partnership are calling for? What do you see coming?
Well, as you know, we're only a few short weeks out from an election, and a lot depends on probably the partisan balance of the administration and the Senate. But I do believe in the House, we will continue to move forward. And clearly, if the balance changes, I think you'll see a lot more climate change and environmental legislation move all the way through and be signed by the White House. But even if we don't have a change, I think that this is a growing issue. There's huge amount of concern, and we will see more movement. Whether or not the Lowenthal bill, which is a federal ban on single-use plastics, moves through, I don't know, but I could see pieces of it maybe being included in language in an appropriations bill. There's always this conflict in the United States about whether we should have federal bans or let states do it on their own. And, you know, that may not be immediately resolved. But no matter what, for many of the reasons that I said, the consumers are growing in their awareness of it. People have seen pictures of what's going on. They're concerned about their own health. I think the demand will continue to increase for having legislation that moves forward both at the federal level and in the states. And, you know, the opposition, I think, will continue to come from the challenges that the fossil fuel industry is experiencing as we move forward with more renewable energy, looking at uses for fossil fuels, and that will put the pressure on you know, to continue to make plastics. And I think that's, you know, one of the challenges. I mean, I was thrilled to hear what's going on in both Norway and Sweden, and I know in other countries getting more sophisticated recycling, you know, doing a whole variety of things. But there will always be this sort of pressure to not promote laws that require that, because you're going to have this challenge. But hopefully we'll move forward on that, because we all have to understand that time is running out on dealing with climate change in general, and this, you know, this fits into it, even if we don't always see the connection immediately.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So speaking of energy, one of the questions that's come across here is how transferable is the energy recovery technology to other countries, perhaps with you know, less developed collection, less rigorous regulatory systems, and perhaps even with, you know, limited trained staff. How do you avoid unintended consequences for human health when plastic is used to produce energy? This question is directed to all panelists. So, Chellie, if you would like to say something, and then we'll ask Matthias and the secretary as well.
Yeah, well, clearly, Matthias has a lot more expertise on that, and I was impressed to see the numbers of, you know, for Sweden, particularly around energy recovery. And we've had a fair amount of investment in that, in energy recovery and in landfill facilities. But I think it's going to have to be, you know, a thorough examination going into the future about the carbon that comes back into the atmosphere through energy recovery. Clearly, it's better than you know, letting it end up in the ocean or in a landfill forever and leaching into the groundwater and a whole variety of other things. But I don't think it is the appropriate long-term solution, but certainly kind of some middle ground there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we take a similar sort of position in looking at how you could take legacy plastic waste, particularly on small island developing states, and do energy recovery from it as a solution both to energy production, where they're often importing diesel, and taking care of the legacy of plastic that is accumulated on their islands. And, you know, it's a last resort strategy, perhaps. Matthias, do you want to say a couple of words on this?
Yes, thank you. Something very, very interesting is starting to happen in Sweden. The energy recovery plants, they also have customers, and they want to buy renewable energy. So what we see now is basically the energy recovery plants or incineration plants, they are starting to say, no, we don't want any plastic to incinerate. This is very interesting because it's very good for us, because we don't want to incinerate it either. We want to recycle it. So the market in Sweden is basically solving this themselves, because it's becoming too expensive for my customers, my producers, to send the plastic packaging to energy recovery instead of recycling it and actually get paid. So things are like this in Sweden. We are basically leaving energy recovery towards recycling.
Excellent. What about chemical recycling? Do you have a view on that, Matthias?
Absolutely. We are following this very closely. I think this technology have some challenges yet. I think we for sure will see some technical solutions in 5 to 10 years. The challenges today is that we are actually speaking about waste, and the chemical recycling process needs very pure materials. So this is a challenge. Until then, we are putting all our focus on optimizing basically mechanical sorting, which can be very much developed as well.
Excellent. Secretary Holsen, what views do you have on behalf of Norway with regard to the energy recovery question, and perhaps also about chemical recycling?
There I go to turn on the unmute button. Well, our focus, I think, is very interesting to hear from Sweden as well, and we recognize a lot of the same situation as we've talked about. The Nordic countries are quite similar when it comes to recycling. So we are also looking to increase material recovery, and also to develop, that chain. We're now working on a plan for a circular economy, where this will also be a main issue, how to deal with the whole chain of products from the design part to the recycle and back again. So it's kind of the same situation as Sweden, actually.
So another question for you that's come from our listeners: are there any resources or research being supported by the governments to put non-plastic biodegradable materials into place, and to use them in place of traditional single-use plastic items?
I don't know if you understand the question. If there's any resources from the government.
Is the government supporting research and development or investigation in to alternatives for plastic that are more biodegradable? Is that part of the strategy?
Well, that is not the focus yet, but as I said, the plan we're having on working on circular economy, there will be we are discussing different kind of tools to change the circle of the products.
So I'm going to switch back to Representative Pingree and ask the same question. Is the legislation that's coming in the United States looking at any resources or research being put behind alternative materials, more biodegradable materials that could replace single-use plastics?
Well, absolutely. And as you can imagine, Maine is very interested in this, because we've had some focus on this at the University of Maine Research Lab. I mentioned that a little bit. And so there is there's been some federal support for that, and certainly some public-private partnerships in terms of, I always get it wrong, but nanocellulosic materials, which we just love because, you know, as I was talking about earlier, our forest products industry has gone through such a major change. People just don't use as much paper as they used to. That's what it comes down to. And paper manufacture was a huge part of what we did, as well as a certain amount of lumber. And so as that's shifted, we've put a lot more energy and funding into this idea of what else can you make from the cellulosic fiber. And so plastic, which seems to just hold great hope, is a really important part of that. We have funded at the federal level, I think a minimal amount of research. I'm anxious to do much more, but funding around wood innovations, because this is not a problem unique to Maine. This is certainly true of forested states everywhere, and even a little bit a part of what happens to destroyed forest materials in our wildfire. So it's also looking at that. I also have tried to insert language any place I can find it, and that's just a way of saying how you get policy into funding bills, to just, you know, even if you can't pass a major piece of legislation, but just to push for more research on forest products, and particularly non-cellulosic feedstock materials. So, I mean, we just see great opportunities. And I know that other countries, I feel like we saw a Finnish presentation on making plastic from kelp, which has the dual benefit of the value that kelp has in our ocean ecosystem and the growing of kelp, and then potentially a biodegradable material. So I think there's much more research to do, but we should be continuing to put a lot more behind it, because it's good for our forest economies. It's certainly good for sort of looking at plastic or those kinds of more permanent impermeable containers that you need for certain kinds of things in a different way. And then I guess I would also say one of the reasons it's particularly important to us is for a forest to do the job it has of carbon sequestration, you need a healthy forest, and sometimes that requires a certain amount of production going on. It's the most likely way you have a healthy regenerating forest is if there's a certain amount of sustainable harvesting going on. And also, of course, it has the added benefit of reducing the amount of wildfires if you're managing a forest well. So lots of win-wins in that.
Excellent, excellent. All right, I have two more questions that I'm going to try and squeeze in before the top of the hour. Matthias, the question that's come in is, what specific steps are being taken in Sweden to accomplish 100% home collection? And what do you think, you know, how much of that is going to actually be recycled and reused in the context of what you're working on?
So this is a huge challenge, obviously, but this is in order to make it easier, basically, to do the right thing. We will have bins, probably. The system is not finalized yet, but we will probably have 2 bins with 4 apartments in each. So you basically can sort 8 different fractions. This is the system that exists already in Sweden, and I think that will be basically the final solution. So this we already know works very well. People tend to sort a lot more because now previous they needed to go to some recycling center on the way to the job or etc. But now they can basically sort at home. And in Sweden, it's also a law to sort. So we need to make it easier for the people. We are thinking that this new legislation and this new system might double the amount of collected waste for further recycling, which is obviously very, very good.
Excellent, excellent. Secretary Holsen, you are going to be the recipient of the last question here for this panel. The listener noted that you mentioned 97% of as the recycling rate for PET bottles in Norway, and they wanted to know if this is the number of collected bottles, and I think fundamentally the question is, what direct information on end of life of collected materials and the reuse do you have for the country of Norway? There you are.
Well, there I am. Thanks for the question, but the fact is that I don't have those numbers ahead of me right now, actually, so I can't answer. But maybe we can send some of the answers on either in the chat or later,
Very good.
so that we can check out the numbers. Sorry.
Very good. No, that's quite all right. It's always great when someone knows they don't know the answer to a question to offer to provide answers later. That's fantastic. So thank you very much. I hope everyone joins me in thanking our three panelists. It is now the top of the hour, and so we will move to our second panel, which is private sector perspectives focused. There will be three speakers. Marko Kakanian, Chief Executive Officer of Global Klewat Limited from Finland. Sig Haldorsson, the CEO of Pure North Recycling from Iceland. Geet Buk Larsen, who is the owner and chairman of the board and business development and marketing director for her firm in Denmark. First, I'm going to give the floor to Marko Kakanian, Chief Commercial Officer at Klewat. Klewat is a fast-growing clean tech company from Finland focusing on solving the plastic waste, excess biomass, oil spill, and other pollution problems for our ocean, seas, rivers, and lakes. Klewat has a mission to make our seas non-plastic with a marine clearing device called CleanSweep, developed by their innovator, Johan Milikorski. This device did not come easy. Milikorski devoted thousands of hours to developing it, and a small prototype has now grown in less than 10 years into a device that is operational in large ocean basins. This was recognized as at the Baltic Seas Project's first prize. It received the first prize in the Baltic Sea Project in 2018. Klewat's goals are high and they are supposed to be achieved quickly. The first devices have been in the sea as of the spring of 2019, and their goal is that from 2 years from now, 20 vessels will be operational. CleanSweep can be used for cleaning and researching, catching both macroplastic and microplastic. In addition to cleaning up the seas, the company wants to take advantage of the vessel's features to enhance marine research. Research runs are an opportunity to gather data on sea and river pollution and with a unique data source to further understand and map such plastic pollution. Klewat aims to reduce the plastic load in the seas to zero. For this purpose, it is important to map out how much plastic there is and know where it needs to be contained. Marko, let me turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Hi all, my name is Marko Kärkkäinen and I lead commercialization and collaboration in Klewat Limited. Thanks for having me on this important event. Klewat is an environmentally focused for-profit private company from Finland, founded to help the seas. Our company is built around solution removing pollution. Next, thank you. Why we do this? Oh, because we in the Nordics have still clean and not so polluted nature. Our aim is to do our part in a cleaning ocean, rivers and lakes. Maybe one day we can join healthy nature for all. Example in Finland, Helsinki City Construction Services, Stara started cleaning harbors and beach areas 1952. Comparing the Asia cities, amount of plastics is small. I did study last year in Asia and result was one city, about 1.5 million inhabitants. 180 tons plastic disappeared every day to jungle and the rivers. At Klivat, we take care of developing the nature on a daily basis, and our mission to make our seas non-plastic with the marine cleaning device developed by our innovator, Mr. Johannes Myllykoski. After the oil disaster in the Gulf of Mexico in 2010, he realized that there are still not good enough solutions for tackle the environmental problems of the sea. He wanted to make a device that collects oil properly. He realized at the same time that the same effort device would collect plastic garbage as well harmful vegetation. Clean Sweep vessel is a crucial part of the Klivat environmental product and service palette alongside with the river fill, a plastic removal tool used of rivers solely working on renewable energy. And Snow management and melting tools working slowly on renewable energy and cleaning the pollution in the snow. Next one. Next bit. We all knew that the problem is big. If we continue littering the current pace, there will be more plastic garbage in our seas by 2015 than fish. Even people start polluting the ocean, there are already plenty of to do. And we can collect in microplastic, macroplastic, microplastic, nanoplastic to 0.5 millimeters. Our newest version, Clean Sweep 3. Next slide, please. Multi-purpose vessel. Next. Klivat innovation is based on utilization of water flow, making it possible to obtain high power with a small amount of energy. The vessel used the booms in front of collecting plastic debris, oil and harmful vegetation to opening, where the flow of water is regulated so that various debris and contaminants get to the ship conveyor and further sorted into tanks. Clean Sweep is highly scalable, as by adjusting the length of the booms, the width of the area be treated can be increased to more than 1 kilometer. Next one. And it's easy to scale up because we can work as a fleet, then we can solve the big areas as well. And in Klivat, we believe that the combination of science, innovation, legislation, and private and public partnership is the key for the long-term prevention and stopping plastic pollution reaching the oceans. And we invite all researchers, government, NGOs, non-profit organizations to join the paddle with us. Next one, thanks. In the order overcome harder than the plastic reduction, collaboration is the key. If we build up the value chain and the companies and governments and people work together, we can pool research materials and begin recycle an industrial amount of plastic waste. We will announce bunch of agreement globally pretty soon. Klivat solution have a very large and huge growing market. Our vessel tested more than 10 countries. Ongoing projects in Finland and Florida are coming up in China, Philippines, and etc. Cleaning up for oil, where our story started. Only system existing capable of collecting significant amounts of floating diesel with good efficiency as it appears in a reality in the nature of the spills. Next one. Klivat is capable of removing algae and other harmful vegetation from the water. Flow-based technology does not cause mechanical stress on water bodies, and the operation has no net environmental impact. And why I'm talking about algae and harmful vegetation? Because same time when you're collecting plastic debris, you have to collect in something else as well. And you have to find a way to recycle or use those materials. That's a typical way when we are harvesting algae. Currently running project in Florida, which was Wade's second part when COVID situation allows us to come back. The project collects algae and nutrients from Lake Okeechobee. The lake is heavily eutrophied due to nutrients flowing from nearby fields. The purpose of the pilot is improve the status of the water areas and reduce the growth potential of algae. And please do not hesitate to contact our amazing and experienced team are ready to help and support you. Thanks for the opportunity to speak and already see huge potential to collaborate with other speakers as well. Thank you on my side.
Thank you very much, Marco. That was very, very interesting, and I'm sure will generate some good questions from our guests. Next up on the panel, thank you, is Sig Haldorsson from Pure North Recycling. Pure North recycles plastics with environmentally friendly energy sources, and the geothermal energy is the main source. Today, Pure North Recycling is the only company in Iceland that fully recycles plastic. In the recycling, dirty plastic waste is converted into plastic pallets that are sold for the production of new plastic products in Iceland and abroad. Plastic pollution is a serious environmental problem of man-made and ever-increasing importance, as we've already discussed. It is important for each nation to become sustainable with its cycle economy, its circular economy, and in recycling its plastic. The aim of recycling is to make plastic back into plastic and to have complete recycling, leaving as little or no carbon footprint, as no chemical substances would be used in the processing. Pure North Recycling processes are unique in the world, environmentally friendly, and based on ingenuity that is Icelandic. Plastic pollution is beginning to affect the ecosystems as a whole, and not the least the marine ecosystem. Icelanders are heavily involved in the fishing industry and tourism, with untouched nature in the foreground, and now this development threatens their performance and well-being. Pure North's activities are well in line with the government's action plan on climate issues, as well as on actions on plastics. Plastic is to become plastic again, and for every ton of recycled plastic, 1.8 tons of oil is saved. The Pure North Recycling biomass analysis compares Pure North Recycling's processing methods with recycling elsewhere in Europe and Asia. The results show that the lowest environmental impact is on the final processing of Pure North Recycling in Iceland. Environmental impacts are lowest in 13 of the 14 impact categories measured in terms of environmental impact. According to these results, carbon dioxide savings by Pure North Recycling has reached 1.52 tons of CO2 equivalent per ton of plastic. Sig, I give you the floor.
Thank you, Mark, and góðan dag, and thanks for this invitation. I'm honored to participate in this event today and grateful for the initiative of the organizers. Events like this are important for all of us to align a plan of action and speed up things to solve this global plastic challenge. I would like to start by showing you a short video introducing our company, Pure North Recycling. So if you could please hit the next slide. Our team has been dedicated for the last 5 years on our mission to turn waste into value with a novel approach. We have developed methods to recycle plastics using only 100% natural energy. As we know, our plant is full of plastic, with over 3 million tons produced every year, with only a fraction of it being recycled. When we founded Pure North, 100% of all plastic waste was exported unprocessed out of Iceland. And I'm sorry to say that we do not have full knowledge of where it ended up. Nobody believed that recycling was possible locally. Investment and running costs would be too high for such a small market. And at that moment, local authorities did not share our vision that every nation should be responsible for their own waste. It was somehow easier to shift the problem away and let other nations deal with it. However, we did not listen to this nonsense. We decided to challenge this task without any support of local governments. Just to explain you a bit, in Iceland we have only 365,000 inhabitants. So even though plastic waste is a problem, it's small on the global scale. We knew that traditional equipment was not suitable for a project, as usual recycling plants need to have a certain scale to make profit. In order to make our project successful, we needed to put all of our knowledge and resources to use. When we started this journey, one of our key points was to design a solution that could be scalable up and down to different volumes of plastic waste and energy sources. It has been in constant development over the last 5 years. We still believe there is room for even further improvements, and by cooperating with international market leaders, we can make a change. Today, we managed to reduce operational cost of 45%, using less water and benefiting nature with 80% less CO2 footprint. This is compared to the recycling process of using oil, coal, or nuclear energy as a main energy source. In our life cycle assessment that is available on our website, purenorth.is, shows the result of using 100% natural energy for this process. Out of 14 categories measured in the terms of environmental impact, Pure North method scores lowest in 13 of them. That surely indicates that our recycled plastics could be the most environmental friendly on the market today. And even though we built up this process on using geothermal energy, we are confident that our knowledge can be used all over the world. We are now working on a new project to offer similar result by harvesting waste heat from heavy industry and utility companies for recycling purposes. Yes, there is a lot of waste energy that is ideal for recycling. In Europe, power plants and utility companies are actually being taxed if they do not put this waste into use. And just in Europe alone, there are 23,000 waste heat sources and over 54,000 waste management and recycling companies that could use our solution. We are now working on modifying our solution to be accessible and scalable to different waste energy and plastic sources around the world. We are confident that our solution has the potential to disrupt the current market, which is growing fast. If we are able to make the recycling process more sustainable and usage of recycled products becomes mainstream, we will be able to build a circular economy that will need less official support. And regarding the plastic challenge in general, it is positive that the focus is now on reducing plastic usage and the serious aspect on how we have handled our plastic waste. This is a key factor. The plastic itself is not the problem. The problem is how we have been using it irresponsibly and do not have any plan of action on how we are going to convert this problem we have created. And if we are being realistic, we are not going to stop to use plastic polymers. Plastic is light and plastic is cheap. Also, plastic can lower CO2 footprint in logistics compared to other packaging. It minimizes food waste and serves even a big role when it comes to healthcare. Today, there's no realistic subsidy for plastic, so we need to make a change on how we use it. The big challenge for the recycling industry is the fact that there are often many types of material and polymers used together by manufacturers to give their product the perfect look. We all know products that use paper and plastic together or different types of polymers. This makes recycling more challenging because the key factor in successful plastic recycling are clean streams of polymers. And let's talk a little bit about what we believe needs to be done in order for a country to be successful on this matter. First of all, the value chain needs to go all the way from the recycling industry to the consumer. As an example, in Iceland we have 2 different taxes on all soda cans and plastic packaging that circulates back to the consumer and recycler. So when you deliver back your soda can, the consumer gets the tax refunded. This means that all the soda cans are of value, and the result is that 90% of all soda cans are collected back to recycling. For packaging, the tax is refunded as subsidy to the recycling company. Our idea is that all authorities should combine these 2 systems for all plastic products. This proves that if we benefit the consumer for participating in the process, we get much better results. We believe that all plastic products should be rated from a recycling point of view, meaning that products that are easily recyclable are rated and marked, for example, green, and non-recyclable rated marked red. That gives the consumer the ability to choose products that are easier to recycle. Authorities have also the possibility to tax higher products that can't be recycled. This way, we also make the producer's liability active, and we are able to make them responsible for the afterlife of the products before they put them on the market, instead of trying to get them involved afterwards. I think we all agree that we need to react, and we needed to react a long time ago. From our perspective and from our experience in Iceland, the public is ready to make changes for the future. Private companies are moving on the right direction, and investors and banks have clearly put their investment focus on green companies and industries. The ones that need to step up the game are local authorities, as it seems to take forever to put in the framework and make common sense changes in order to get ahead of this global plastic challenge. And I want to thank you for the time and the opportunity to share our vision. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sig. Very interesting, and I think, again, a lot of food for thought that will be a great discussion. And I think you make a very important point that, you know, there are applications of plastic that are tremendously beneficial to society for medical uses or for lightweighting of transport, and thus we're going to have plastic for a very long time, and figuring out the best way to ensure that it is recycled is critical. Let me turn to the last panelist for this discussion. Geetboek Larsen is the owner as well as the Chief of Marketing and Business Development for AG Vestergaard Larsen. Geet will discuss her leadership in technologies and strategies aimed at avoiding plastic becoming waste in the first place by reusing plastic in a circular economy. AG Vestergaard Larsen offers products ranging from plastic granules, grinders to powders, which are all based on recycled plastic. The company focuses on everything from PE, PP, PS, and ABS to the more technical plastic types such as PA6, PA6.6, with and without glass, as well as PBT, POM, PSU, and PEEK. With more than 45 years of experience, Arje Vestergaard Larsen has refined their approach into some of the most cutting-edge recycling solutions in the region. All products are subject to extensive quality control, which takes place before, during, and after production, and the samples are archived for a minimum of 3 years. Through these techniques, precisely 2.4 kilograms of CO2 per kilo can be saved from the recycled plastic used. Geet, let me give you the microphone. There you are.
Thank you, and thank you for letting me attend this webinar. I think we're going to start with a small video that we have made in regards to our invention, so to speak. It's coming up on screen now. I don't know if you have sound or you only have it texted. We'll find out. Right, that was the end of that. I hope you found it interesting, and I think what we were trying to really use and show is that recycling can also be, I'm not saying it's being simple, but it can be done as long as you're willing to invest time and money, for that matter, in sorting this out. I think first of all, we have been recycling plastics since 1972, and so we have some experience, I would say, which makes it quite interesting that I think one of the things that we're saying right now is that finally we've become a hit and the buzzword because we're in this business. But I'm thinking that I was listening to, obviously, to Matthias from Sweden saying this about the different types of material, how important it is that we need to sort out in various types of material. As you can see, and as we were told just before, that we sort a lot of different types of material. And this is one of the issues that are really difficult when we're talking about the household waste. I think also one of the issues that we are facing, at least these years, is all these definitions that are really, really hard for a normal citizen, so to speak, to be able to understand. For example, what's the difference between bioplastic and biodegradable plastic? And I have to say, I know it's not going to be popular, but I'm going to say it anyway. I don't think that biodegradable should be in the market whatsoever, because in our world, at least, it really messes with the whole waste stream, and it completely ruins the waste stream of the polyolefin plastic and also the bioplastic, because the ordinary bioplastic you can actually combine with the polyolefin plastic. So that's one thing. You could actually say that the biodegradable is the only single-use plastic existing, because it's a one-time deal. So it doesn't really make sense. Maybe it does somewhere, but I'm not really sure where. Also, we're talking about all these things that we should do. Obviously, plastic has none whatsoever, anything to do in oceans or rivers or wherever, where it's not supposed to be. But I'm still thinking that some of it's got to do with a lot of, when we look out into the world, we are seeing that the collection is, the collection of waste is not really working. It's not like it is here in Denmark or Norway or Sweden or a lot of places here in Europe, and obviously in the US. But as long as the collection part doesn't work, you will see this waste all over the place. So one of the things that we need to be able to sort out is that this waste collection is actually working in a proper way. And when that happens, you can take a look at the recycling in those regions. And before that, obviously it's got something to do with human nature, or rather human behavior, which is not really good, as long as we are not able to tell people that this, that waste is a resource and not waste. And what you're doing when you're throwing waste around, you are not a nice person. That was putting it very diplomatically, I think. So I think it's got a lot of things to do with the behavior, all in all. I know that I'm a board member of the Danish Plastic Federation, and a couple of months ago we actually launched a campaign about plastic, because obviously plastic has a really bad reputation and we wanted to change that. Also something about behavior, not throwing plastic around, but keeping it in as a resource. You can take a look at it. It's public at the Danish Federation site. I think you should go in and have a look at it. We are currently talking to other countries, actually. They are interested in showing some of this campaign in their own language. France is one of them. So I'm thinking that all in all, the plastic recycling business in Denmark is at least coming around. And the machine you just saw, the unit, we are calling it George, which is kind of funny. It's an inheritance from my father. All our machinery out here in the factory has names, and we are currently building a bigger version of George that are able to, when we're done, it should be able to actually sort about 1,200 kilos per hour, and that is of the household waste, which is very important. The other fractions, obviously the post-consumer, which is obviously something that has had one life, but still able to recycle this into a quality that's really high grade. And also, obviously, we have the post-industrial waste as well. We are currently processing about 16,000 ton every year, and we're expecting an addition of 4,000 ton in 2021, next year. So I think there are good reasons and possibilities in looking into the mechanical recycling. And I'm guessing that one of the things that would be really, really interesting in looking into is all these, when you have plastic that are a combination of various types, because that's where the really difficult issues are coming in. And I think a combination, maybe. I'm not so fond of the chemical recycling, obviously, because they are looking into the same types that are actually able to being recycled. So it would be really great if you could do a combination of the types that are recyclable. They should be recycled because it makes more sense, and what's not recyclable could go into the chemical recycling. For me, that would make more sense than taking everything into chemical recycling. It might be necessary in some countries because the amount of waste and landfills that are all over the place, they will never be able to clean it up otherwise. So it can work some places, but I think at least in Europe and US and places where we have the solutions, at least the possibilities of solutions, we should go for the mechanical recycling because it makes more sense. Yeah, so I think that was it from me for the time being. I'm open for questions.
Gitta, thank you very much. Let me invite Sig and Marco to turn on their cameras and microphones, and we'll have our panel discussion. Let me start, Gitta, you made a very good point there, which is there's no single fit for every circumstance. There is perhaps applications in some places for mechanical recycling, and in lesser cases for chemical recycling, and in perhaps lesser even in cases than that, some of the incineration and energy production. And that's part of the challenge here, right? Is you know, a hierarchy of applications to address recycling and moving things into the circular economy, but even also some changes in what we use plastic for in the first place. And as you mentioned, I think the whole concept that we're dealing with, you know, multiple polymers and some complexity, mixtures when they come to you, and, you know, as I mentioned earlier, some of the adhesives and strengtheners and colorants and various other things that are part of our mix here. So I'm going to ask you the first question, and that would be, you know, this George technology sounds very interesting, but I did sit up and say water. So what happens to the water, and you know, how much water is contaminated during this process?
Well, that's the good thing about this. Actually, we are able to even recycle the water we're using, and we're not using chemicals when we are cleaning the plastic. And if we are looking at, obviously not something exactly the same because we actually patented George, but something close to, we are using 8 times less water than the others are doing. So, and a lot less energy as well. So I think George is ready to fly into the world.
Excellent. Marco, you mentioned that the cleaning device is capable of dealing with microplastics in the ocean, not just macroplastics. We've seen a lot of discussion about this, that some of these kinds of different devices on the ocean can collect macroplastic that's on the surface, but once you start trying to collect microplastic, the fineness of the system, you know, is a threat to biodiversity. Can you talk a little bit about how you're thinking about that problem?
Yes, I have to say that I'm looking for this plastic problem like a global angle. I live in Asia, but I'm from Finland, and I have worked with this issue globally, different countries. And in our invention, this vessel can collect in microplastics less than 0.5 millimeters particles, and it gives us opportunities what we haven't even knew before our customer contact us, like some of our hydropower power plants from Indonesia, that do you have a solution to collecting the microplastic, those ponds where they're cooling the water. And at the moment, our vessel can collect in a surface, but on the future, when our next innovation comes on the future, we can collect in the cheaper. But even so, there is so much to do that one company cannot do everything. But our vessel, because it's so innovative and can do that, so small particles, it's open to market for us. So the others are collecting plastic bottles, but we can go further that.
Excellent. Sig, I'm sure you were listening when Gitta said that thinking about biodegradable plastic is a challenge to the waste stream. I've certainly heard that compostable plastics that we've seen already marketed don't actually compost very well when they get into the natural environment. The ocean is too cold, for example. What is your company's thoughts on compostable plastics and biodegradable plastics in the waste stream, which we hope to no longer be a waste stream? I will correct myself.
I totally agree with Gitte. This is a challenge for the recycling industry. Like we say, I mean, the main challenge is the mix of different polymers, and now we have added this on top of it. So I totally agree with Gitte that this is something that needs to be issued and talked about.
So from a recycling industry perspective, if it were proposed to limit production to certain polymers and not introduce biodegradable and compostable, Gitte, what do you and SIG think of that as a way to make sure the stream of product coming at you was clearer? Would that be a part of a solution?
Obviously that would be great. It would be nice. It would be easier in a lot of ways, but I'm just not thinking that I don't think it's going to happen. And one of the reasons why is that there are so many, I know there are so many types, but there's a vast difference between what you're using in the medical, within the medical industry, and what you're using in food approved. But I think the medical industry is actually one of the things where you can't touch it, and it's fine that you can't do that. I don't know what the legislation is in the US, but here in Denmark, all the medical waste goes to bio waste. It's incinerated due to health issues, of course. But I know there's been discussions about saying that you should only have PE, PP, and PET as the primary ones, which is okay. But if you tear a car apart, you will look into PA, nylon, and I still believe that security when you're driving is kind of important. And nylon can do something else that the other types can't. So I think that one of the things that we need to look into, at least us who are into the recycling, is to develop more sorting, because you can't really get ordinary people to do all the sorting for you, because then you need to be an engineer in order to sort your waste, and that can't be done. But getting back to the biodegradable, one of the reasons everybody is thinking that it's just great, because I'm driving in my car, I'm just throwing it out of the window because tomorrow it will rain and then it will be gone. That's kind of the mindset of people. And if you're looking at biodegradables, first of all, they are kind of, I'm going to say something not nice. It's kind of a designer drug, because it's been designed to either in water or in air or in sun, and you never really know which one it is until it's there. And the biodegradables, it actually takes about something between 3 and 7 years, depending on what it is, under really special circumstances before it's degraded. It's a certifiable fact.
Sig, any additional comments on this?
Yeah, I think what we've done here is first we looked at where we can find the big volumes of clean streams. Of course, that's the easy way. I think what we need to do is, I totally agree, it's difficult for people. You can find, if you go in your own household and you look at the shampoo bottles, they can be made from 3 different types of polymers. So people don't know how to sort it. And the labeling is not good enough. So people really don't know. That's why I was talking about before, that we need to maybe put in a global system where all products put on the market are labeled if they are recyclable or not. And then we can tax accordingly to that. So if you're putting products out on the market that are not recyclable, then it should be more expensive than the ones that are easy to recycle. So we need some kind of system like this and make it more obvious for people if the product is recyclable or not. We did here in Iceland, we set up a program with 10 of the Iceland's biggest companies, which we went into the companies, educating them about the plastic streams that they have, and set up a special waste management system for each company because they have different streams of plastic. This has been a good success, a great success, because now they committed themselves to bring all the plastic waste to us for recycling. And this is now generating into the household of the people working in these companies. So they have now more knowledge about the plastic streams that they have. So there's a lot of, this is a big issue, is the sorting and the collection of the plastic, for sure.
And that's part of the thing that I am excited about listening to the two of you and the technology that you're working on. You know, I feel like for too long, we've been blaming consumers for throwing things away or into the environment, and in some ways blaming municipal solid waste managers for mismanaging these things, getting them contaminated, getting them mixed, and shipping them to Africa and Southeast Asia as a way for them to go away. I think, you know, what I'm hearing from both of you is, you know, it would be so nice to have a clean, you know, stream of something coming at you for processing. And, you know, I know that the EU Directorate General on the environment has talked a little bit about limiting production to a certain list of polymers. I know that in the United States, our National Academies of Sciences have talked about standardization and simplification of, you know, which polymers are used and simplification of products. I think, Sig, your suggestion of a taxing structure, you know, may be a way to get at part of this, so that, you know, those things that are actually recyclable because they are simpler or more standardized can be addressed. What would you say to policymakers? What should they do? And I get to you raised your hand. What do you?
I think it was just, I mean, when we are looking at the household waste that we are getting, we are actually getting it from a pre-sorting facility. So when it comes here to us, we have the two fractions of PE and PP, but it's only approximately 90% clean. So that means the last 10%, that's what George is handling. So we are getting a completely clean fraction. It's 99.92% a clean fraction. And the whole idea about this, having these clean fractions, is that when you keep it clean, you can recycle it over and over again a lot of times. There is a thumb rule saying that you can do it about 12 times, then you might not want to add about a few percent, maybe a virgin material or another stabilizer, in order to get the mechanical back again in the polymer. But if you keep it clean, that's the whole issue. Like Sigurdur said, when we have these clean fractions, the world really opens up, because then it becomes this resource that we're looking into. And I don't know about the whole tax system. I think if the whole change could come, and I'm still hoping, I'm a bit blue-eyed like that, that I'm hoping it's going to come, because it's for the world's best. Because all this about, you know, the taxing and obviously recyclers, this is one of the issues that we're talking about, is that people who are actually recycling as a factory like ours, should get some sort of incentive from the government in order to handle all this. But I have to say, at least for our factory, and at least I can do that because I'm the owner. Yay! I'm more into the market, saying that it should be able to solve itself, and I'm really hoping that all the taxing and all this regarding recyclers should get some sort of reward for handling plastic. I think it's the wrong way to go, to be honest.
Let me just explain a bit what I meant by that is when we're talking about circular taxes that go in a circle. So it's not for the recycler. Like I said, the value chain needs to get down to the consumer.
Okay, right. Then we agree.
Yeah. So, for example, we are collecting a lot of agri-film from farmers, and a few years ago we got very bad quality of material. It was very contaminated with different types of plastic and stuff like that. And by setting up a small margin at the end of it, saying, okay, if you take good care of it and bring it to us like a product, not like waste, then we can pay you for it.
Yeah, so makes sense.
Yeah. So this is what I'm talking about. If we have not taxes for the government, but taxes that go in a circle for the one who's doing the work. And I think if we have a system that the ones that are motivated to do a good job, they should pay less. Also with the household. If you bring your household plastic sorted and in good condition, you should pay less for your waste than if you don't do it. So we need to have some kind of system that allows us to do this. It's my belief.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
So Marco, listening to this conversation, you know, what is your perspective, and where does where would the plastic that is collected by your technology go?
It depends. It's nice to hear, you know, this Nordics, what has happened in the Nordics countries, the developed countries. It's so easy, but our perspective, the most biggest problem is in Southeast Asia and Asian countries or Africa. And there we are talking about problems which are huge. We don't have to talk about polymers. We don't have to talk about taxes whatsoever. We have to talk about how we're collecting those first. And of course, same time, we have to raise up awareness, training the people. And we are lucky that most of the countries that those areas have already woke up that have to do something. And our advantage that we have experience in different locations, different countries, different cities, because even inside one's country, there's a different kind of method of collection and different kind of way to handle the waste. So when we are collecting plastic on the rivers, on oceans, there's some percentage, small percentage can recycle, but there is something else as well. And when we know those particles or those waste fractions, and we know where we can put those, then we are like a winners, and we can build up the real business case. And then we can get governments, local government behind us and support us. So it's very exciting because we are working so many countries and so many continents, and the problems, it's same, but it's a different size and logistic and make a difference and the challenge.
No, that makes complete sense. I mean, obviously the circumstance in the Nordic countries versus a circumstance in West Africa is very, very different, and the plastic collected from households is less potentially, hopefully, contaminated than plastic that's already been in the ocean environment. And so it's you know, if it gets sorted and channelized first, it is in a better thing for recycling and reuse than if it is already been in a landfill, already been in the dirt, already been in the ocean.
Yeah.
I think that's true.
And that's why I'm surprised that there is a lack of information how much plastic goes to the rivers and seas, and that's why we have even in-house scientists in our team, and we collaborate with different universities to get more information and share the information, because those universities get easily information how much microplastic are on the lakes or rivers. So that's why I always say cooperate with everybody. I'm going to call Kitte maybe tomorrow already, so we can find and also figure out that we can collaborate on the future.
Excellent.
Definitely.
Excellent. Well, we have 5 minutes left until the top of the hour, and I'm supposed to provide some concept of concluding remarks. So let me thank all three of you for joining us today and for participating on this panel and sharing very, very interesting technology. And it certainly gives me hope to hear Gitte say that the private sector and the profit motive, without a government dictate, is possible here. That that there is a shot at thinking about how to make a profit and solve this problem at the same time. So with that, let me offer a few concluding remarks. I think it's very clear that plastic is a pervasive problem. I think it's very clear that there's a goal and desire to have it be an input in a circular economy. I also think we've heard that plastic plays an important role in society. I think that we've noted that it has helped reduce food waste by increasing the shelf life of food and drinks. It has reduced breakage and other things, again, for beverages and other liquids. It has light-weighted aircraft, automobiles, and thus substantially reduced the carbon footprint of transport and other logistics. It is also critical, as we've seen in this pandemic, to public safety and health. At the same time, there are a lot of uses that we've applied this material to that are arguably simply wasteful, that we're using something that we should reserve for dealing with our carbon footprint or our human health, whatever the priorities that society wants to put forth. That's what we should use plastic for, and we should search for alternatives for some of the things where that's not the case. And that gets us to this conversation about the circular economy. If you have a plastic product, whether it's a single-use product that society values, or a multi-use long-lived product like the dashboard of your automobile, how do we make sure that it is actually reused? The material in it is reused, that it has some way to to re-enter the circular economy. And I think there are questions about the role of policy and the role of government in thinking about what is allowed and what incentives are created, including the sort of circular taxes that SIG suggested. This is the beginning of a conversation. Plastic has been around for a few decades, but I think fundamentally, we are just beginning to see how big and bad the pollution problem is, and beginning to think about how to solve it. I want to again thank our partners in this webinar, the embassies of Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Iceland, and Norway, for helping organize and host this event. I really appreciate all of you that logged on to join and listen. And I want to thank all 6 of our speakers today for their time and interest in sharing government perspectives and private sector perspectives. to how to solve such a serious problem. Thank you all, and may everyone have a very good day and a good week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.